Are children racist? To directly answer this question, yes. In fact, children have a higher tendency to bluntly comment on a person's skin or ethnic features if it is something they have not been exposed to before. Calling others racial slurs and pointing out the color of another person is inherently racist, right? Why is that, if they may exhibit any, no one ever refers to a child's supposedly discriminatory actions as racist? Children are little copycats that go around repeating information they've learned. How a child behaves is a product that is directly the result of the environment around them. This happens to all age groups, of course, but it's more apparent in children. So with that, what happens when news channels, parents, and children watch every morning and cartoons directly targeted towards young kids spew misinformation about an entire race? An abundance of research as well as personal analysis will reveal how American youth perceive African Americans' intelligence based off of the stereotypes that surround them. Misrepresentation. In an early 2023 study, Pew Research Center distributed votes from 4,742 African American adults with an online survey that ensured verification of each participant's race. These are what the results show. Black Americans see several problems in news coverage of Black people. Most say that Black people are covered more negatively than people in other racial and ethnic groups. Black Democrats and Republicans, as well as Black adults across all age groups, are similarly critical of news coverage of Black people. Educating all journalists about issues impacting Black people in history is among the steps Black Americans say would help the situation. Many Black Americans say Black journalists are better at understanding them and covering issues related to race, though few see a reporter's race as a key factor in determining the accuracy of news in general. According to the data concerning the negativity in news, 63% say news about Black people is often more negative than news about other racial and ethnic groups. 28% say it is about equal, and 7% say it is often more positive. 57% say news only covers certain segments of Black communities, compared with just 9% who say it covers a wide variety of Black people. Half say coverage is often missing important information, while only 9% say it often reports the full story. 43% say the coverage largely stereotypes Black people, far higher than 11% who say it largely does not stereotype. An additional 43% say both of these things happen about equally. It's safe to say Black people agree mostly, regardless of political status, that we are represented incorrectly in such a powerful platform such as the news. Misinformation. In October of 2023, We Need to Talk, a 7-part series hosted by UNLV Oral History Research Center, unpacked how racist beliefs occur and how they follow us in society. These beliefs especially affect the views of newly immigrating families on the appearance of African Americans or people of African descent. Nisa Sun, for example, was a panelist on the show. She said her family moved from Hong Kong to Canada. Her family saw these racist depictions being pushed onto the whole of Black people and thought the misinformation as fact. Black people are stereotyped to be criminals and violent. Because of these very harmful generalizations, immigrants and natives are taught to keep away from Blacks. The root of Western media is white supremacy, and that's where the implicit bias stems from, Shin goes on to say. It's the idea of the racial stereotypes that are repeated time and time again through the decades, shown on the television of Black people depicting stereotypes that are perpetuated by the white community. Ricardo Torres Cortez discussed how widely known news outlets such as the New York Times are supposed to be dependable news sources that people are supposed to trust. But how can people who are more likely to be on the receiving end of these stories be able to trust these outlets when they spread false stereotypes and generalizations that affect the image of all Black people? Worry of misinformation about Africa. These problems don't just affect African Americans, youth, or America in general. Western media in itself has a huge reputation for spreading misinformed outlooks on ethnic countries and continents. Africa is an amazing example of that bullying, quote-unquote. Remi Adekoya had been asked on a Polish documentary to explain the drastic population growth as well as life in the slums in Katanga, Uganda. The interviewer quickly turned to ask about any similar issues affecting the whole of Africa. To this, Remi thought, why do you focus on the slums and not on the positive stories? Why search out the most miserable environments to film in and continue propagating negative stereotypes of Africa as a nest of poverty and problems? The Western media likes to cover stories that make them money. Well, what makes them money more than milking the atrocities of these communities that are already assumed as portrayed as bad and poor? So how does all of this connect to children's views on the education of Black people? Well, according to the Journal of Negro Education, there is an assumption that Black children are deficient in cognitive skills necessary for school success, largely because of the consistent finding that Black children achieve lower average scores on standardized tests of intelligence than their white peers. Some factors that contribute to these findings are lack of motivation at home and in skill compared to white peers, personal discouragement imposed on young students, and socioeconomic status. To highlight the self-discouragement in children, it is important to start first with the visibility of minorities in media kids view the most. Online platforms and television such as YouTube and children's networks are one of these. According to Common Sense Media, patterns of visibility or invisibility tend to reflect the reinforced societal perceptions of a group's value and importance in the broader culture, signaling who is respected and influential and who is not. In kids' television, most characters are either animals or white people. As shown in the table provided by Common Sense Media, white people make up nearly 3/4 of these characters, with Black and other ethnic characters making up less than 15%. In STEM-based children's shows, Native Americans are not represented at all, while Caucasians make up 52%. Black characters in these shows, along with other minority characters, are often produced with a multitude of stereotypes, a few of which show low self-esteem, low academic performance, and low financial home environments. The misrepresentation of religious ethnic characters is also a trend. For example, darker-skinned Muslim women are being shown in the media, especially directed towards teenagers, to get rid of hijabs. Usually in a scene where the character is being shown to evolve from her past or because a higher power had forced them to remove the hijab. This provides the notion that all Muslim women don't like wearing hijabs or they are unprofessional. An example is Nadia from the Netflix show Elite. In order to become accepted at her private school, she removes her hijab. It later becomes clear that the show really used the hijab as a development of her character. Okay, sure, cartoons and news outlets are racist. But how does this affect a child's mindset about the capability of an entire race? Well, learning specialist and psychologist Dr. Rebecca Maness says the crucial age for development is as young as 3 years old. Kids from 3 to 6 are starting to create symbols and determine language. This includes adopting generalizations and stereotypes. In a 2021 study conducted by researchers in Journal of Children and Media, white characters were not shown to be in the highest percentage of the TV STEM fields. Instead, characters who are racially ambiguous and an unnatural color were often represented to be in these fields. Especially with the huge shift to children being basically raised by the internet, if these platforms don't show racially diverse role models, ethnic children will not have the proper motivation to want to practice any sort of interest in STEM fields, and this goes for all minorities. In other words, if the TV doesn't believe you can do it, and the adults don't believe you can do it, then you'll start to believe that too. Now, how to debunk racism to a 10-year-old? Well, despite popular belief, it's actually not very hard to teach a kid about racial equality. In fact, Dr. Maiza Akbar says it's never too early to educate children on the subject. Dr. Howard Stevenson also says in his research that increasing racial understanding promotes a natural acceptance and improves well-being on harsh topics such as these. A great way for a kid to get a better understanding of race and be exposed to many people different from themselves are shows like Sesame Street and Bubble Guppies with lots of different characters. It is very important for younger generations to have an understanding of their skin color as well as the various ones around them.